Experience with the Goodwood underfacer. I really like the layout, but it only has an input buffer. Weird that they wouldn't have an output buffer. I don't know the specs of it as far as like how many buffers they have, but basically most people who talk about buffers, even professionals who build rigs, don't seem to understand this concept. So I'm just going to lay this out for you very quickly. We're going to play the where should the buffer go game. So I'm going to grab just hypothetical pedals here. So here's my 3 pedals, okay? So let's pretend for now that these are the 3 pedals that I'm going to be using. And I'm going into a Fender Deluxe Reverb and I have a Strat. And the first pedal I'm going to hit is the Ruby Red, and then I have the Maxon SD9, and then the Spectre Flanger, and then it's going into my Deluxe Reverb. Okay, so if you have an input buffer, right, the first thing that's going before the Ruby, as soon as I turn this pedal on, even though all these are true bypass, this is now the buffer. As soon as any pedal comes on after a buffer, that pedal is now the buffer from that point on. So when people say, I'm buying a really high quality buffer, it's a $300 input buffer, and then their first pedal is, say, a compressor that's always on, all their buffer is doing is conditioning the patch cable that's going from the guitar to the buffer to this. So it's just one cable, literally. So the guitar is full capacitance, it hits the buffer buffers the one cable that goes into this pedal, and as soon as this pedal is turned on, this is now the buffer that goes through this, and goes through this, and continues to go all the way down the line. So having just the input buffer is worthless unless everything is always off. And then you can have an input buffer and then it doesn't matter, because if it's a good quality one, it'll drive the line through your entire pedal board, assuming everything's true bypass. The other part that is a problem with just having an input buffer is if you use a pedal like this that has a buffer in it, this is going to do the same thing, whether it's on or off. So you have your guitar plugs into your buffer and your buffer goes into this thing, even if it's on or off. Now this is the buffer from that point forward. So your $300 input buffer is now worthless from that point forward. You're paying $300 to buffer a patch cable between the buffer output and this. So that's why you need to have an output buffer and an input buffer, because that way this pedal, or the pedal that's on, this pedal, doesn't have to be responsible for driving too long of a line before driving that long cable line that goes back to your amp. So it's definitely wise for you to use a dual buffer system. And this is why I don't understand when guys say, well, just get an input buffer. That means that you're relying on your overdrive pedals or whatever pedals on to be your buffer for everything else, and they're just not designed to do that. So this is why you need to have a high quality input and a high quality output buffer.